So we have seen that men are more likely to own land and to have property rights than women. But the next question is, why does it matter? Why is it important that women have land rights and property rights? There's a number of studies that have tried to look at the correlations between women's property rights and other kinds of outcomes that we might think of as being good outcomes or outcomes that we would like to see. It's worth noting that most of these are just simply correlations. It's very difficult to prove sort of in a very rigorous way that there's a causal relationship between the two. But we do see over and over again correlations between women who have property rights and good outcomes for themselves, for their children, and their households. So the first of these studies is looking at India and looking at women's property ownership, looking at both agricultural land and housing. And what they find is that women who own land or housing are less likely to experience domestic violence. There's a literature on women's bargaining power that tries to look at how women's bargaining power affects the outcomes of household decisions. One of the measures of women's bargaining power that has been used is women's share of land ownership and of other asset ownership within the household. So several studies, including one that I did in Ghana, shows that when women own more of the assets, including land, household expenditure patterns differ. And in particular, more of the budget is spent on food. In a study in India, when the laws were changed to improve women's inheritance rights, one of the outcomes was that girls' educational attainment increased. So giving women more rights in terms of inheritance had a direct impact on girls' education. And finally, a study in Nepal finds that women's land ownership is correlated with better nutrition outcomes for children. So this kind of outcome has implications for food security programs. So these are 4 examples of how women's land rights are correlated with better outcomes for themselves and their families. But we might also care about how women's land rights are related to agricultural productivity. There's been a range of studies that have looked at how women's land rights are related to their agricultural productivity. And generally what they find is that women farmers are as productive as men farmers when they have the same access to land. And that one of the key reasons that women farmers are less productive than men is that they have less access to land and to other inputs. So one study looking at Ghana that really tries to understand why it is that women farmers are less productive than men traces it back to issues around land tenure security. So in these areas of Ghana, land is allocated through the community. And people with more political power in the community have stronger land rights. Having stronger land rights means that they're more likely to leave their land fallow, which increases the productivity of land. Because women don't have as much political power, they're then less likely to leave their land fallow and then have lower levels of productivity. So ways to strengthen their land rights could have a significant impact on their productivity. There's another set of issues around women in agriculture that's worth thinking about. When women do not have secure land rights, they're often not viewed as being farmers. They're seen as being helpers or members of the family, but not as farmers in their own right. And this has a number of implications. One of them is that it means that they often don't have a seat at the table in any kind of stakeholder decisions that are related to farms or farming. One set of these is related to large-scale land acquisitions. When women aren't seen as farmers, they don't have a voice in any of these kinds of discussions. Not being seen as a farmer also often means that women don't have access to other inputs, in particular to extension or credit services.